This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, the NFL wire site from USA Today. Now, today we are without Seth because of some scheduling things and when I was able to record the episode. Seth was not able to come on, and that's okay. So he will be back. He's not gone, and so you get to listen, or have to, listen to my voice for an entire episode. Episode 242. And guess what? The Cardinals got their first win. As you probably already know, they defeated the Cincinnati Bengals 26-23 on a last-second field goal by Zane Gonzalez in Cincinnati to improve to 1-3-1. And finally, Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray get their first win. And we're going to talk about that on this show. Well, I'm going to talk about that on this show. As in this edition of the show, episode 242, I'll be talking about my reactions to the game. What did I take away from that win? There were some injuries. I'll talk about that. David Johnson, Tramaine Brock. There was an additional roster move of Trevor Williams being added to the roster. 5 weeks into the season, we'll kind of look at the debate is, did the Cardinals make the right pick with Kyler Murray, or should they have gone with Nick Bosa, who is having himself a season so far and was huge on Monday Night Football? We'll talk about some of the improvements on offense, as well as the durability of the offensive line outside of the right tackle position. We'll look around the division, then we'll preview the game against the Atlanta Falcons. So that's all. That's everything that I've got on tap for this show. Thank you for listening as always. And let's start with that game, because that game was a bit of a roller coaster because of how things started. As I tweeted it kind of after the game, and when I posted the recap that I wrote, it was like this. It said the defense was bad, then it was good, then it was bad. David Johnson was great, and in the end they got the win, but it wasn't all good and it wasn't all bad. And so, first of all, what was super important was that they got that first win. It was critical. The Cardinals had been improving. In some ways, they had been giving the effort, and for Cliff Kingsbury's sake, and for the feeling around the team, the vibe in the locker room, getting a win was very important. It was about this time last year when you could tell the players had stopped buying in a little bit with Steve Wilks. They were the doors blown out a couple of times early on. But Josh Rosen enters the picture. They lose the game against the Seahawks. And then things start unraveling for them. Now, it wasn't week 5 last year that the Cardinals picked up a win over the San Francisco 49ers. But it feels like this one was a better win for the team, even though it was over a winless Bengals team, than the 49ers win a year. We're going to have to wait and see. But at least they got the monkey off their back. They're not winless anymore. In fact, they're not the only win. They leave the Bengals as a winless team. The Dolphins are still winless. And so it gives them that little boost. It takes the heat a little bit off of Steve Keim, as that was something that General Manager Steve Keim has kind of been the topic here over the last week and a half as to should he still have a job. Now, that's a quite debate to have all season into the off season, but getting a win was necessary. Kyler Murray was, he was great. If you look at the numbers, now, once again, they do have some issues. They don't play well in the red zone. They give up 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to tie the game. But let's kind of break down the numbers for Kyler Murray, because he completed 20 of 32 passes for 253 yards. He did not throw an interception. He didn't throw a touchdown either. He was sacked only once. And then, add on top of that, he rushed 10 times for 93 yards. That's including that 24-yard scamper at the end of the game that put them in field goal range. Murray continues to do a really good job of protecting himself. And interestingly enough, when Cliff Kingsbury was asked about, how Kyler did, he talked about his two favorite plays were actually incompletions. There were a pair of plays when Kyler just threw the ball into the ground, got rid of the ball, and threw it away instead of taking a negative play. One of Murray's biggest problems thus far has been simply forcing something or holding the ball too long, taking a sack, and putting the offense in a really bad situation. The Cardinals did a fantastic job of that. They avoided negative plays. And Kyler, who was only sacked once, he did a better job of getting rid of the ball to, as Cliff calls it, know when the party's over. It's the first time I've ever heard that phrase used for that. Know when the party's over and live to play another play. And so what we got from Murray, aside from no touchdowns, no throwing touchdowns, no passing touchdowns, we got really the first sort of game where he not only made plays, but he also avoided mistakes. And the lack of touchdowns is concerning, especially with the Cardinals playing in the red zone. But you look at the metrics across the board in terms of their offense, and you have to feel positive about the direction things are going, especially considering where the Cardinals were a year ago in terms of their offense. Kyler scrambled when he needed to. He made big plays, and I think we're finally seeing him know when to use his legs, how to use his legs, and when to get rid of the ball. In fact, I'm not worried about the lack of touchdowns because touchdown passes come. Now, there was the one throw to Trent Sherfield in the end zone. On Twitter, some thought it was Trent who didn't come back. I think on TV, on the telecast, they also suggested that Sherfield should have anticipated a shorter throw. Cliff Kingsbury said that was more on Kyler. He should have made that throw. He should have gotten that throw deeper into the end zone. But other than that, you can't complain much. They used, now primarily, a running attack, which was very interesting. The talk up through the first month of the season was just how little the Cardinals had been running the ball. And how could you have a guy like David Johnson and not use him? Well, guess what? Maybe, just maybe, Cliff Kingsbury was telling us the truth. Now, Cliff Kingsbury doesn't tell us a whole lot, and we know that coaches don't like to reveal too much with the media. But Cliff has been very adamant about, the fact that they haven't been running the ball or they've been throwing it so much or using 10 personnel has been more of a case of circumstance of them being behind. They have been behind in many of the games, and they haven't run the ball as a result, so they have to start passing. But take a look at this. In a game in which they were never behind more than a single possession, in fact, they led for the entire game. They did. They led for the entire game. They were tied at the beginning. And so the Cardinals they rushed the ball 38 times. David Johnson got his touches. He ran the ball 17 times for 91 yards, averaging 5.4 yards a carry. Chase Edmonds had 8 carries for 65 yards, including a 37-yard score, which it felt like it iced the game, even though it didn't. Kyler had 93 yards rushing and a touchdown. Andy Isabella had a couple of rushes for 11 yards, and Keyshawn Johnson as well had a 3-yard run. Say what you want about what happened last season. say what you want about the first 4 weeks of the season. We now have a game in which the Cardinals were in control of, or at least it was a close game throughout, and it wasn't all pass. Kyler threw the ball only 32 times, and they ran the ball 38 times. That tells you something. Now, they were having success running the ball, and 10 of those runs were scrambles, naturally. Now, I don't remember how many of those were designed runs, but the fact that the Cardinals were balanced, and Cliff Kingsbury were talking about that. He says, ideally, it's balanced, 50-50. And I've talked about on this show, and I believe so I have on Twitter, the kind of the thing that you know that Cliff Kingsbury is going to do. If he wants to get that running game involved, the running game will come early with the offense with balance. If they have a lead, it continues. And if they have a lead late, it's used even more. But if they get behind, every coach abandons the run because analytically it's less effective. It uses more time. You don't gain as many yards. And so you need to get back in the game by throwing the ball. And so if everything's going well, the Cardinals run the ball early and they run the ball late. Only in this case, they also ran the ball in throughout the game because they were in control. Is this what we can expect to see over the next several weeks? I think it's going to always come down to the fact, well, one, are they in a position to run the ball? Is it early in the game? Are they down more than one score? And two, how effective is it? We saw a number of things. David Johnson, like if you were watching the game, David Johnson's game didn't feel like the best game because there were there were a few of those 2-yard pickups and a couple of times when you clearly could see that he took the wrong running lane. Nonetheless, 17 carries, 91 yards, and then to add 3 catches for 65 yards on top of that, 156 total yards. There's really nothing to complain about that. 156 yards from scrimmage is a classic 2016 game. In fact, if you look at, aside from the struggles he's had with running the ball or the lack of running production, look at this. In 3 of the Cardinals games this season, David Johnson has had over 100 scrimmage yards. Now, let's not forget that in Week 1, he rushed for 82 yards. He had 18 carries for 82 yards. It was very productive. It's when things got out of hand against the Ravens and the Seahawks and the Panthers that the running game became sort of a problem because, well, they were falling behind or they were trying to play catch-up. And they weren't simply giving David the ball. His numbers this year, he's averaging over 4 yards a carry. His production is looking a lot like 2016, the difference being he didn't have as many touches. Now, he now has 3 games of over 120 yards from scrimmage. In that first game, he had 137 rushing, 139 yards from scrimmage against the Seahawks, and now we've got 156 against the Bengals. I think it's safe to say that David Johnson is back, that this season, the success that he has is built on the success of the team. And you might say that really kind of about any running back. But what's been fun is to see that they've been incorporating Chase Edmonds as well. Chase Edmonds is a guy that, well, you've heard the buzz about him ever since he was drafted. Steve Keim raved about his skill set. Steve Wilkes raved about Chase Edmonds and his smarts and his effort and his production, just what he did. And we've heard about, like all last year, Wilkes wanted Mike McCoy and Byron Leftwich to find opportunities to get him and David Johnson on the field at the same time. It only happened a handful of times. It still has only happened a handful of times, but he's now become an integrated part of the offense. He had 24 snaps on offense, which went up from I think it was 13 in Week 4. He carried the ball 8 times. He had 3 receptions. So he's now become a critical part of the offense, kind of a key piece, especially with the wide receiver position banged up and kind of inconsistent from some of the players down the depth chart. But Cliff Kingsbury is now on the record as saying we're better when Chase is on the field and David's on the field. Now, combined on the last 2 weeks, they have had 2 running backs on the field, I think, 8 times, 4 times each game. It appears that's something they're going to try and integrate a little more. There was more 11 personnel, 12 personnel on Sunday against the Bengals than there were in previous weeks. Again, they weren't playing from behind. And again, they were dealing with injuries at the receiver position, so they were down Christian Kirk, they were down Damiere Byrd. And so naturally, and they brought in Pharaoh Cooper, only being with the team for a week after spending, he was with the team earlier, but clearly using the tight end made more sense, especially with the running game and considering the lack of depth at receiver. Now, you look at some other things. The defense still has some question marks. That first drive was terrible. Well, they went down and they gave it. Actually, if I forget, Cardinals were down 3-0 after that initial drive by the Bengals, where Joe Mixon just torched them. 60 yards rushing in the first drive, and this is a team that had averaged 45 yards rushing per game as a team. The defense just didn't seem to know what they were doing, and they were fortunate to force Cincinnati to go with just a field goal. Then after that, things improved. So whatever adjustments they made, they stopped the run, and they defended the pass really well. Now, you're going to say, Jess, they got torched in the fourth quarter, and I'm going to point something out. That is true. The Cardinals did give up 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns, but I want to give you a little bit of context to understand why this might have happened. Tramaine Brock got hurt and missed the last 20-something snaps. What that meant is, now they still have Kevin Peterson, who's been playing pretty all right for the team so far, but that left them without a nickel cornerback. So that meant adjustments. That meant putting Buda Baker in the slot where he hasn't played all year. He played there last year, but it put him in the slot, and it meant there were 2 rookie safeties on the field at the same time. So Deontay and Jalen Thompson were both on the field at the same time. So for the last half of the fourth quarter, for much of the fourth quarter, you had 3 rookies in the secondary. So you have the 2 Thompson they're not brothers, the Thompsons, both at safety, at both safety positions. You had Buda in the slot. You have Byron Murphy, a rookie, playing at one corner. And then you have Kevin Peterson, who has only a handful of starts in his career, on the other side. Buda Baker would be the only real experienced, with any significant experience, the only guy in that secondary with significant experience. And what happened after Tramaine Brock got hurt? Well, we noticed the Bengals in hurry-up mode, and Andy Dalton, who is a skilled quarterback, he's not a great quarterback, he's not a bad quarterback, but he's definitely skilled, and a veteran quarterback who's been there and done that. He rallies the Bengals and makes some big throws for 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to tie the game. And after Chase Edmonds had gotten that touchdown, they gotten that 23-9 lead, that 14-point lead, it felt, all right, the game is on ice. And then the Bengals start to come alive. I think much of that was, well, yes, I think after the 2-touchdown lead that the defense kind of breathed a little bit. They kind of exhaled and felt that they had it in the bag, and so they did take things easier. Nonetheless, when you got 3 rookies in the secondary and the Bengals going hurry up and Andy Dalton being a veteran quarterback, that shouldn't be too deflating for a Cardinals fan to know what happened there. And so defensively, there's still lots to work on, but there was, after that first drive, there was a lot to be happy about. They gave up over 100 yards again on the ground, so they've done that every single week this season. But this time, outside of the 60 yards they gave up to Mixon in the first drive, he only gained 33 yards the rest of the game. Now, this is going to be critical as they move forward. Defensive consistency has been their issue with the running game. Last year was the same thing. They would defend the run well for 15 plays and then give up 3 big ones. if the Cardinals appear to have found the right rotation up front, maybe they've got this run defense figured out. And in another week, because we only got one more week with Patrick Peterson being out with the suspension, get him back, and maybe this defense is in better shape than we thought. Now, say what you will of how they've started, we do know that every new system, new scheme requires adjustment. The offense is making progress. The defense hasn't been great. But let's see what happens when Patrick comes back. And we're about halfway through the season. Will the defense step up and be better? Let's stop that for now. Coming up next on the Rise Up See Red podcast, we're going to talk about the injury situation because it's not only Tramaine Brock, but David Johnson got hurt. We'll talk about that situation, the addition of Trevor Williams. That's coming up next on Rise Up See Red. We're back on the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. And I'm going to talk about the injuries that the Cardinals dealt with. Now, there was only one announced injury, and that was Tramaine Brock. He left the game once with a knee injury. It looked like he hyperextended it, but he came back in. It didn't do too bad. Now, mind you, Brock was dealing with a back injury all week leading up to the game and was limited in practice on, I believe, Thursday and Friday, and missed practice 1 or 2 days. I don't know what happened with the shoulder injury, but it was announced that he had a shoulder injury and was questionable to return. That injury is, if he has to miss time with the Atlanta Falcons coming to town, that's going to be tough. Now, the Cardinals did add Trevor Williams, formerly of the Los Angeles Chargers, who was released from injured reserve. He had a quadriceps injury he had since the summer. They put him on injured reserve after week 1 when it wasn't progressing, and it would appear now that the injury is all but healed because to be released with an injury settlement, it does require that you basically be healthy. So you have to be physically cleared. And so he should be ready to play. Now, is he going to play this week? That's going to be an interesting case. He's a talented cornerback who ended on injured reserve last year, was on injured reserve this year. He's a little smaller. He's 5'9", 190, but he's made some plays. They've gotten really good play from Byron Murphy. Hasn't been perfect. Tramaine Brock has been adequate, but if Brock is out, that leaves them with 3 cornerbacks. It leaves them with Murphy, Peterson, and Chris Jones. And then it forces you to have Budda Baker move into slot because it appears that they don't want to move Murphy inside this year. They're going to leave him as a border corner. And it appears that they didn't move Peterson inside and bring Chris Jones into play on outside. Chris Jones didn't get any reps in the preseason or in training camp in the slot. Kevin Peterson appears to not be a slot guy. So you've got problems in the slot. And bringing Trevor Williams, I don't know if that helps, because I don't know if he played much in the slot with the Chargers. He was a starter. He might have moved inside. His size suggests that perhaps he did. But then you're going to be relying on Budda Baker again at the nickel corner spot, at the slot. And then you're bringing in 2 safeties that are rookies. I don't know if it's what you want to deal with, but I don't know if the addition of Williams means that Brock's going to miss time. He's got the shoulder injury. It got banged that up. But Trevor Williams is an interesting addition to the group. He's talented, if not injury-prone, which is kind of the story for everyone. And it does give them a better option because if Brock has to miss any time, well, now you've got in a week after the Falcons game when you head to the Giants and Patrick's off suspension, you got Patrick and Byron Murphy. You've got Kevin Peterson, and then you've got Trevor Williams. That's a much better depth situation. The question is whether Williams can play in the slot, which I'll be honest, I haven't found that out yet. The more concerning injury, I think, that you're probably all going to say is that of David Johnson. We didn't know about any injury to David Johnson until after the game with Cliff Kingsbury said that his back tightened up on him, and he was really proud of Johnson for how he played late in the game, being a little bit banged up. And and taken that hit after that big catch on that final drive. The next day, there was he said there's always the chance. It wasn't real. The way he said it he was responding to a question. He didn't come out and say that David Johnson might miss time. The question was asked, is there a chance that he'll miss in time or miss the game this week? Cliff said there's always a chance. I don't know which way to go with how to read that, but it feels like I don't think they're super concerned. Back injuries are tricky, so he might be limited some in practice this week, but they did bring back Justin Davis to the practice squad because they only have 3 running backs on the roster. So they re-signed Justin Davis to the practice squad to get them a 4th running back on the team to at least help with that. Now, if David Johnson is missing in this game, that's not good. Say what you want about Chase Edmonds. I'm not sure that Chase Edmonds is ready to be a 3-down featured back. He does things. He looks great when he runs. He runs with desperation. Ron Wolf likes it. He runs with desperation. His burst is incredible. He's not nearly as patient as Johnson, and he's fast. Like, he's got a quicker start than Johnson. He's much quicker on his first step. But I don't think the Cardinals can really afford to miss David Johnson. His size, his threat in the running game, and the dimension he adds in the passing game as well is something that kind of sets him apart. Now, there are other running backs in the league that can catch the ball. Very few can catch the type of balls that he can. Like, 2 of those catches that he made were just incredible. Those are receiver-type catches. Now, granted, he's usually being guarded by a linebacker, and so the matchup is favorable. But you can make a tough throw, and he can make a tough catch. It doesn't have to be a dump-off or a swing pass where there's no one really guarding him, and he's just making plays with his legs. He makes plays down the field, and it's really reminiscent, some of these catches that he's had, of 2016. Because in 2018... when he was using the passing game, they were almost all dump-offs and screen passes and things of that nature. The Cardinals, Cliff Kingsbury is doing a much better job. Now, this injury situation is really... by the time you listen to the show, because I'm recording this on an early Wednesday morning, it'll be posted Wednesday, as you'll already know. The first injury report won't come out till later today. And that first injury report's going to be interesting to see whether he's limited, because I'm sure he will have an injury designation with a back injury. Will he be limited? Will he plead full? Will he be out of practice? If he misses practice on Wednesday, that's a reason for concern. It means that he needed time off. The fact that he played through pretty much the entire game, he had a few fewer snaps than in previous weeks. Part of it, I think, is getting Chase Edmonds in the game. And maybe part of it was the back. He needed to come out. But the back tightened up on him. It was really painful for him after the game. I'm sure he's gotten treatment. Of course he's gotten treatment. But if he has to miss practice completely on Wednesday, that really kind of tells you that his availability for Sunday is up in the air. If he's limited all week, I would expect to see him play just based on what we know about how players go. If they're limited all week, usually it looks like they will go, that they'll be able to do that. Injury-wise, hopefully that means, Andy Lee should be good to go. They released Ryan Wislow with the addition of Trevor Williams. So Andy Lee will return to punting duties. I didn't even talk about Zane Gonzalez. Zane Gonzalez bounced back nicely after missing and looking shaky with Ryan Wislow's holder. Now, if you look back and watch some of those, the ball wasn't placed great, and he didn't blame the holder, but clearly he has much more confidence kicking when Andy Lee is the holder. Now, he did miss his first kick. Guys miss kicks. He also made his next 4. So I think perhaps the worries about Zane Gonzalez, if he's not going to be perfect all year, but maybe the shaky performance against the Seahawks we can discount. And hitting his final 4 against the Bengals is more of something to be positive about. That getting Lee back in there as a holder should fix things. Lee comes back from injury. He will resume punting duties. We're going to wait and see on Christian Kirk. Honestly, I think I'll be surprised if he plays this week. There's a chance that Christian Kirk might come back. Damiere Byrd, I hope, is back. He adds an interesting dimension to the offense. And other than that, we'll have to see if Zach Allen is ready to return. And then, of course, Tramaine Brock. Trevor Williams is an interesting addition, as I've talked about. We'll see how he's used, and I'm sure the question will come up in Wednesday's press conference. He will get asked about Williams and whether or not he will get worked into the lineup right away or not. So coming up on the Rise Up See Red podcast, I'm talking about an interesting debate that came up because of the play of the 49ers on Monday night. Looking back now, would you Cardinals fans rather have Nick Bosa or Kyler Murray? That's coming up next on the Best Hour of Cardinals Talk on the web, the Rise Up See Red podcast. We're back on the Rise Up See Red podcast, the Best Hour of Cardinals Talk on the web. Now, Cardinals 1-3-1. They have Kyler Murray. San Francisco 49ers are 4-0. And Nick Bosa is having himself a very nice rookie season. He looks every bit as dominant as he's looking like the player everyone thought he was going to be. That said, he's got 3 sacks so far, so he's got as many sacks. He's got fewer sacks than Chandler Jones and Terrell Suggs, but he was a beast against the Cleveland Browns in their 31-3 win. He had 2 sacks. He had a forced fumble. It was kind of a statement game for him on national television. And it sort of has renewed the debate among a lot of people of should the Cardinals have done what they did. So essentially, would it be better to have Josh Rosen and Nick Bosa or Kyler Murray? This was the debate that Cardinals fans dealt with all the time leading up to the draft. Now we actually have some game tape. We've got some experience, and we can kind of reflect on whether that was the right choice. Would the Cardinals be better off with Josh Rosen and Nick Bosa, or would they be better off now with Kyler Murray? It's an interesting case, and traditional logic would say if they drafted Josh Rosen and really believed he was a franchise quarterback, then you have your franchise quarterback, and it's always better to add other pieces. A pass rusher is a premium position. So, if you're going with traditional belief, the Cardinals should have taken Nick Bosa. The problem is there wasn't much about Rosen's rookie year for you to be super positive that he was going to be a franchise quarterback. And if you look at his play so far with the Miami Dolphins, while he's not been bad, because he hasn't been, and he wasn't purposely bad, or it wasn't even like his bad last year wasn't even necessarily his fault. He was on a terrible team. He was getting hit all the time. But his play degraded throughout the year. And this year, there's been some positives. I like to think about it this way. So, if we don't have Kyler Murray, and we have Josh Rosen, do the Cardinals win any of the games they lost? Let's look at the Detroit game. Murray was kind of bad earlier, but he caught fire in the fourth quarter and it ended overtime. If that's Josh Rosen, are they able to do they fall behind as early? And is he able to catch fire the way Murray did and rally the team back to that tie and almost win and then tie? Okay? Murray was great in his debut. I'd say they probably lose that game. I don't know how the first part of the game goes, but I feel confident in saying that I don't think that Josh Rosen was going to lead them on the same. That he wasn't going to rally them for 18 points in the fourth quarter. I mean, because with Josh Rosen as a starter, they averaged 14 points a game. Let's be honest. they don't win. They don't tie that game if it's Josh Rosen, so they lose that game. So instead, they're and then in week 2, do the Cardinals beat the Ravens with Josh Rosen and Terrell Suggs? I mean, and Nick Bosa? That's a question. I mean, Bosa's only got 3 sacks in the year, and 4 of them came in week 5, and 2 of them came in week 5. I'd say probably not. I don't think Bosa or Rosen make a difference in the beatdown of Carolina. I don't think he makes a difference in their loss to the Seahawks. And would Rosen have led the Cardinals to 26 points against the Bengals? And how much of a difference would Bosa have been? Especially when you have Terrell Suggs and Chandler Jones. How much playing time would he actually get? So you look at it this way. Now, if you're thinking long term, maybe Bosa would have been the bigger pick. But it comes down to this. Is Josh Rosen a franchise quarterback? And more importantly, is Kyler Murray significantly better than Rosen? I think right now we can say with some small degree of certainty that Murray appears to be much better than Rosen. There are things that he can do with his arm that are on par or even better than Rosen. And then on top of that, you add his running ability. So did the Cardinals make the right decision? I think so. Now, cards on the table, I wanted the Nick Bosa. I believed in Josh Rosen, and I believe he will be a solid quarterback, but I don't know about that anymore. After his year with the Cardinals, and now the disaster that is the Miami Dolphins, he might be damaged goods. He might be damaged goods. For as much talent as there is, I don't know if he's going to ever get a real shot at being a starter with a team that has any semblance of talent. He's going to be the guy that teams just get. He's going to be Blaine Gabbert. And Blaine Gabbert's had himself a fine career in the NFL. Like, in terms of lasting in the league, I mean, when you last as long as he has in the NFL and you make quarterback money, you've had some success as a starter, but mostly he's not been a great starter. And you're still a backup, you're still in the NFL, you've made plenty of money, your life is set, and no one can say that, oh, you were terrible. You lasted in the league for 8 years, 9 years. Josh Rosen is on that career track now, unless he can get in the right situation. Maybe he still will do that and will develop into the quarterback, but it appears he is not the impact player right away that Kyler Murray is. That said, that's what I wanted. I wanted the Cardinals to go with Nick Bosa and keep Kyler Murray. Keep Josh Rosen and build around him. Because I would have liked to have seen what happened. However, it appears that the Kyler Murray versus Josh Rosen debate appears to be clear that Kyler Murray's got the higher ceiling and appears to be a better player now. And that being the case, they did make the right choice. In a couple years from now, if Bosa is an all-pro. But here's the thing with Bosa as well. The injury concerns were real because he missed the summer. He missed the spring workouts. He missed time in training camp. And he's been healthy so far. But considering his family history, his own injury history, we'll have to wait and see. Talk to us in 2-3 years. If Kyler Murray is a franchise quarterback and Josh Rosen is not, then the Cardinals most certainly made the absolute right decision. Coming up next on the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. We're going to talk some more about the offense, the improvements, and the offensive line durability. That's coming up next on Rise Up See Red. We're back on the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. And let's talk some more. I want to talk a little bit more about the offense and offensive improvements. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about the offensive line. Because what was one of these things that everyone was concerned about is about their durability. Now, aside from right tackle, they went into this season planning on Marcus Gilbert. He's on injured reserve. Justin Murray, they acquire him via waivers. He is in the lineup. They like him. But then they go and sign Jordan Mills, a guy who, started every game for the last 3 years. So durability really is his thing. He's now on injured reserve. So now they're stuck with Justin Murray. We'll see how that goes. But outside of that right tackle position, DJ Humphries, Justin Pugh, A.Q. Shipley, and J.R. Sweezy. The 4 of them have played every single snap on offense this year through 5 weeks. Now, cross my finger, knock on wood, that I didn't just jinx them because I had to look at that. But yeah, that's surprising. Because what was perhaps the biggest question about this offensive line? It wasn't necessarily about talent. It was about durability. Could we count on DJ Humphries to be healthy? Humphries has been fine, but he's been healthy. Justin Pugh, he missed some time last week in practice with the shoulder injury, but he played, and he's played every snap. And he's been pretty good. He's been fine. A.Q. Shipley, he's been solid. I mean, come on. J.R. Sweezy, he's been durable, and he's been solid. That's not everything's been good, okay? That's no problem. The fact that they're staying on the field is huge. And the truth is, the pass protection hasn't been bad. You look at the sack numbers, and they're bad. They gave up 20 sacks in the first 4 weeks. They only gave up 1 against the Bengals. But if you've watched the Cardinals play, and I know you have, how many of you were absolutely frustrated at Kyler Murray? He's a rookie, yes. But at least twice, he was scrambling and ran out of bounds behind the line of scrimmage. So it wasn't like he was even really sacked. He just ran out of bounds with count of the sack. That's not on the offensive line. There's been a couple times, there was at least once when he was trying to roll out of trouble, and he just tripped. He was trying to scrabble a couple other times. So probably half those sacks, there was time, and it just ended up in a sack because of decisions by Kyler Murray. And so think about that. The offensive line hasn't been bad. Their run blocking, look at the rushing production. They're averaging 5.4 yards a carry. They were dead last in yards per carry a year ago. Now, they've had more big plays. Some of that is, is Kyler Murray scrambling. Yes, it is. But David Johnson is averaging more than 4 yards a carry. Chase Edmonds averaging, 6, 7, 8 yards a carry at this point. The offensive line is playing well. The question is whether we'll stay playing well and all of that. But the fact of the matter is the Cardinals offensively, think about this, is they still have problems in the red zone. Don't get me wrong. They were 1 of 6 in the red zone against the Bengals. But they piled up 514 yards of offense. If we want to look at some of the offensive rankings, I'm going to pull up a stat. I'm going to assume that Johnny Touchdown, he's a podcaster and writer for Revenge of the Birds, one of Seth's guys. If we look at this, the Arizona Cardinals are 17th in total offense. They're 16th in total yards. They're 11th in rushing yards per game, averaging 126. And they're averaging 5.4 yards per carry, which is 4th in the league. Context. They were dead last in pretty much every single category, except for rushing touchdowns. They were dead last in almost every single significant offensive category. So to go from dead last to middle of the pack to above average, the truth is that is historic. That's historic. It's amazing. They've had red zone problems. The touchdowns are going to be coming. The touchdowns will be coming. This is a new offensive scheme with a rookie quarterback. And if you think about it, whom did they add to the mix? They got healthy offensive linemen back, and they added Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury. And they've gone from being a terrible offensive team, terrible, to a competent offensive team. Competent. They scored 26 points. 26 points. The Cardinals, I don't think, scored more than 21 offensive points in any game last year. That is incredible. They put up over 20 against the Lions in week 1. They added 26 against the Bengals. And here's the thing. The Cardinals are 8th in the NFL with 22 scoring drives. 8th in the NFL. Okay? The touchdowns, they need to score touchdowns. They were so bad. They had so few scoring drives. In fact, last year they were great in the red zone. They were one of the best teams in terms of red zone efficiency. The problem is they never got there. So, say what you will, the defense has been more of a problem than the offense. Scoring in the red zone has been a problem. Negative plays have been a problem. Offensive scheme, not a problem. The Cardinals are an average to above average offensive team now. They were so bad. So bad. And now they're pretty okay, which is so positive. Coming next on the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web, we're going to talk about the division. Look at the NFC West, what the Cardinals have to do to get back in the mix. That's coming up next on Rise Up See Red. We're back on the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. And hey, well, let's take a look at the NFC West. The NFC West is a little bit surprising because right now the team at the top is the San Francisco 49ers at 4-0, and they look good. They look good. Now, have they really beaten anyone? That running game, very good. Jimmy Garoppolo has been solid. The defense is legitimate. Now, can they sustain it? The Rams, on the other hand, seem to be struggling. They're 3-2. They're in third place in the division. They've lost 2 in a row. They're far from out of it. The Cardinals at 1-3-1 pretty much are out of the mix in the division already. Because you've got the 4-0 the 4-0 49ers, the 4-1 Seahawks, and a 3-2 Rams team that is more talented than its record. And there are concerns about them and Jared Goff, but one of their 2 losses was to Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks, and it was only a loss because Greg Zuerlein missed a field goal. Most of the division games haven't happened yet, and they kind of start this week because the 49ers will play the Rams, and then we'll kind of get a look at if the 49ers are for real. How do they do against the Rams? How do they do against the Seahawks? They still, I believe, have all their division games coming up, but if we look at the Cardinals and their schedule, they've got the 49ers coming up twice in the next few weeks. They will play them on Thursday Night Football, on Halloween night. Then a couple weeks later, they'll play them again. And so it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. Now, the team that they're playing really well is the Seahawks. Their first 3 wins were far from they weren't super positive wins. You didn't feel confident with them. But now they're sitting at 4-1. Russell Wilson. Say what you want about Patrick Mahomes. Russell Wilson is playing at another level right now. He's playing at another level, and he's playing in an offense that almost handcuffs him. He now has 1,400 yards passing. He has 12 touchdown passes. He hasn't been picked off yet. He's completing 73% of his passes. He is playing at a god level right now. We saw him pick apart the Cardinals. We saw him pick apart the Rams. That team looks really good. The Cardinals pretty much, I mean, if you want to look at the outlook for the schedule the next couple of weeks, they do have two very winnable games, and if the Cardinals are making improvements, they should win two of these next. They should win at least one of these next two games, because they have the Falcons at home, a 1-4 Falcons team. Then you've got the New York Giants on the road. Both are winnable. They should beat the Falcons, and they could win in New York. If they win both, they're 3-1. And while that probably doesn't put you back in the picture with the division, especially with the schedule that you have coming up, it does take away takes away that desperate feeling of like, oh my gosh, they're going to be terrible again, because they will through the first half of the season have matched their win total from the previous season and looked better doing it. Now, as we look at the division, suddenly the 49ers games looks much more difficult than anticipated. I think I predicted 2 division wins this year, maybe 3. That if they get 3, that means they're going to have to. I don't think that the 49ers are a team. And I thought the Cardinals were bad enough that I wasn't penciling in a sweep of the 49ers. And I think right now it'd almost be foolish to think that the Cardinals could sweep them. Can they beat them? Yes. Can they? Especially they will be at home on a Thursday night against the 49ers. Playing at home on Thursday night almost always is an advantage. It won't be nearly the significant advantage over the 49ers because it's the same time zone. So it's not like there's the travel factor. That said, the Cardinals will need to they'll need to steal a win or two in the division. They really do need to win a couple of division games to show some progress, because going 0-6 in the division would be really rough. They've already lost their first division game to the Seahawks at home, so they've got the 49ers at home and on the road, the Rams at home and on the road, and Seattle in Seattle. They will end their season in Seattle and in Los Angeles. And so the division is tough. Is it the NFC North, where you've got 4 teams that are all very good right now, where you've got the Packers, the Lions, the Vikings, and the Bears, all of whom are kind of in the mix? The Cardinals are definitely behind the rest of the division, and I don't think they're really in position. Like, give us a couple of weeks. If Seattle loses a game and San Francisco loses a game, and they end up being a game and a half out by virtue of that tie, okay, maybe we could start talking about maybe being competitive in the division. But as of right now, they are definitely, this is a 3-team race for the division, with the Cardinals just being competitive overall. That's pretty much what we have. Coming next on the Rise Up C-Red podcast, I'm going to talk about the upcoming game. We're going to look at the Atlanta Falcons and make my predictions. That's coming up next on Rise Up C-Red. We're back on the Rise of C-Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Thanks for bearing with me all by myself today in this edition. But the Falcons, they are a bad team right now. They sit at 1-4 on the year. Defensively, they're better defensively in terms of yards than the Cardinals. They rank 23rd in yards allowed. The Cardinals are near the bottom. Now, let's kind of look at what the points they're giving up per game. Let's look at the points that we're giving. They are allowing 30 points a game. They are the second worst defense in the league. Now, they're not quite Miami Dolphins bad, who are giving up 40 points a game. And the Cardinals aren't much better. They're allowing 27.6 points a game. So they got the fifth worst defense in terms of points allowed. The Falcons are giving up 30 points a game. They're giving up 378 yards a game. They aren't stopping anything. Now, if you haven't seen this clip by Deshaun Watson when talking about the Atlanta defense, they're a real good defense to play against. You can score on them down the middle. You can score on them on the outside. You can score on them in the seam. You basically can score them all over the place. Offensively, they're still very talented. They're 10th on offense in yards. The problem is they are also turnover prone. They are tied essentially with the Cardinals. The Cardinals average 20 points a game. The Falcons average 20.4 points a game. They're ahead of the Cardinals in terms of offense, but they turn the ball over a lot. They are -5 in the turnover ratio this year. Matt Ryan has been picked off 7 times. Now, granted, the Cardinals have yet to intercept a pass this year. And they don't run the ball very well. So this game is very winnable. The problem is, because the Cardinals defensively have questions, this is an Atlanta offense that definitely can explode. Matt Ryan has 11 touchdown passes. He's got over 1,600 yards through 5 games. He's completing 70% of his passes. He's been sacked 12 times. So you look at his numbers, they're okay. But he has been intercepted 7 times, so he's averaging more than an interception a game. The running game has been atrocious. Devontae Freeman is averaging only 3.2 yards per carry. There are people calling for more of Ito Smith. He's kind of like their Chase Edmonds. He's averaging 5 yards a carry. But they're not able to run the ball. They've got some matchup problems. Julio Jones is a matchup problem. They have a tight end that will be difficult to guard in Austin Hooper. He leads the team in receptions with 34. Mohamed Sanu, very talented. Devontae Freeman also can catch the football. That doesn't include Calvin Ridley. So they have talent. It's just defensively they've been so bad. The Cardinals have the chance, if they can play better at home, if they can continue on what they've been doing, if they can continue what they did last week against Cincinnati, I think we can see another shootout game. They say take the over in this game. I haven't looked at the odds yet, but let's kind of take the over and expect a close game. Because I think the Cardinals' defense has enough issues that Atlanta will be able to move the ball. But the Cardinals should be able to move the ball down the field against that Atlanta defense because they're not that good, frankly. What do I expect? I think, can we finally see a 30-point outburst? I think so. I think the Cardinals can get this win. I think they can go and get the win 31-29. I think it's going to take either a last-minute touchdown or a last-minute field goal from Zane Gonzalez to do the trick. And so, I'm assuming David Johnson's going to play. If David Johnson's going to play, then I think they can run the ball. I think they'll be able to move the ball offensively. The key is the Falcons only have 5 sacks this year. They have talent. They've got Vic Beasley. They've got Tack McKinley. Those are guys and they've got Grady Jarrett. Those are all guys who can get to the quarterback, but they haven't been getting to the quarterback. And the same was the issue last week. The Bengals didn't have many sacks, and they got to Kyler once. I think that's kind of what we can expect. If the Cardinals can keep 1 to 2 sacks max and not turn the ball over, this is a game that they should win. I don't know if they're going to blow them out. I don't expect them to, but I think this is a game where both teams move the ball up and down the field, and I think the Cardinals will get their first interception of the year. Cross your fingers, and that the Cardinals will come away with a 31-28 game. The matchups I'm worried about, naturally, I'm worried about Devontae Freeman. Okay, he's talented. There's going to be a drive where he looks like a star, like Joe Mixon did, and Joe Mixon's a very talented back. I'm worried about the tight end coverage again. Austin Hooper, they did fine against the tight end against the Bengals. But again, we've got two rookie safeties. I don't know who's going to be playing in the slot. Or maybe they're going to stick to having Hassan Reddick cover those tight ends, because guess what? He can do it. He's not bad. He was pretty solid at it. And with that, we will end this edition of the Rise of C-Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root. Thanks for listening. We'll be back again in a week, hopefully talking about another win. Seth should be back then, and you'll get to hear me and him. Again, thanks for listening, and go Cardinals.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up C-Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms, so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red Sea Red, and of course, Rise up, Sea Red.